We're on the Mishnah on Daf Mem Beis Amud Beis. Zok the Mishnah. Ve'elu dvarim she'enish boyin alein. These are the things that are excluded from Shavuos. All the different types of Shavuos. We spoke about so far Moedim and Mixus, but there's also Shavuos Edis, and there's other Shavuos, Shavuos Shomrim. All these don't apply to the things that we're going to mention. We come across this throughout Shas. Ha'avadim, you don't make a shvua on avodim, v'hashtaris and anshtaris, v'kakayis and karka, v'hegdeshes. You don't make a shvua about hegdesh. The Gemara is going to bring a pasuk for each one of them. I mean, really three of them, and then we say avodim is hukshel karka. But all three of them are going to have the same type of limud that will tell us that these all different types of shvuas are excluded from all of these different types of ownership. In addition, there's no kefel on these things, or tashlume arba b'chamisha. Again, the Gemara is going to tell you from a pasuk that someone who stole karka is not going to pay kefel when he returns it, and obviously arba b'chamisha is not going to apply to any of these things because arba b'chamisha is only for an animal. It can only apply for hegdish. Shemechinam ein nishba. A shemechinam who had his karka, for example, or one of these four things stolen, does not make a shvua to pater himself. A shemechinam is pater from gneva v'aveda, but he has to make a shvua. But he doesn't even have to make a shvua on these. Noisa sacher ein mishalim. And if he's a noisa sacher, if he's a shema sacher who does have to pay, if it's one of these things, he doesn't pay. Shimon Omer, Shimon says that if you're talking about something, he was makdish something, if it's chay b'achuyusa, meaning if a man said harei alai shlamim, so I'm mechuyev to bring a shlamim, and then he sets aside an animal for that shlamim, he sets aside a cow for that shlamim, he's going to be chayiv, because this, if someone steals it or someone's might have mixed this on that, he's going to have to make a shvua to the owner, because the owner, if something happens to this animal, he has to replace it with a different animal. Since he said harei alai, since the owner said it's incumbent on me to bring this carbon, so if something happens to the animal, he has to bring a different carbon, and it's a davar garim l'mamin. And therefore, someone who causes it, if there's some dispute about it, that would be mechuyev shvua. The person who took away his animal has to make a shvua. But if he said harei zeh, this animal brought as a carbon, so then the animal is already dedicated to that carbon, and if something happens to the animal, the owner doesn't have to bring it, so there's no shvua to him. He's not anymore really a party to this, right? Because the animal itself has to be brought. And if something happens, then he doesn't have to replace it. So ein nishboin, he doesn't make a shvu on that. There are some things that are like karka but not like karka. As we're going to see, the Gemara is going to explain. The Mishnah is going to explain what that means. The Chacham do not agree. Ketzad esa gafanim tu'unas masatilach. If Reuven says to Shimon, I gave you 10 grapevines that were full of grapes, and the other man and the person, and Shimon says to him, no, it was only 5 grapevines full of grapes. So Rameya mechayev shvua. Rameya says, even though it's attached to the ground, it's not considered like karka, which we said there's no shvuas on karka. That was the beginning of the Mishnah. But it's still mechayev shvua, since it's not considered to be, even though it's mechayev karka, it's not considered like karka. They say since it's attached to the ground, it's treated like karka. So therefore, even though he's might have a mix on it, there's no shvua. Like we said in our Mishnah, there's no shvuas on karka. Now another din in the Mishnah. You only make a shvua on something that's a quantifiable amount, meaning that the loan and the part that the person was maida on is quantifiable. We know how much it is. Ketzad. We give an example. Bayis mali masarti lach. Reuben says to Shimon, I gave you a house full of grain. The kiss mali masarti lach. I gave you a purse full of trinkets. Allah mini edela. Allah any idea. And the other says, I don't know if the house was full. I don't know if the pocketbook was full. But he says to him, that which whatever was in the house when you gave it to me, it's still there. Whatever was in the purse is still there. Potter. He's Potter because he didn't know how much it was. Neither of them knew how much. He just said it was a house full. He didn't know how much that was. And the other person said, I returned it to you and I don't know how much that it was. But in the case of the house, if this person says, I gave you a house full of grain up to the ceiling, and the other one says, no, it was only up to the window. So that is considered that it's quantified, and therefore you can't be mechuyev Shavuos moedim mitzvahs. Tashlume kefil minal. Going back to the beginning of the Mishnah, we said that one does not pay tashlume kefil on karka, avodim, and shtaris, and hektish. So we do the first thing. What do we know tashlume kefil is excluded on these things? The Tan Rabban, I'll call dvar pesha klal, I'll shav al chamor al sheh, al salma prat. On if someone, this is talking about with this is the pasuk that talks about geneva that you pay kefil, and it says I'll call dvar pesha on anything that a person does wrong. That's a klal. I'll shav al chamor al sheh al salma. If it's a shar, if it's a cow or a donkey or a sheep or a piece of clothing, prat. That's a specification. Al kol aveda chazav kol. Then it goes back and says on anything that was lost, that he has to pay kefil, that was stolen, he has to pay. Chazav klal, pratu klal, yatadon elike ena prat. As we know, we're not saying a ribuy miyut, but rather saying a klalu prat. And when you have a klalu prat, it has to be like the prat. Ma prat mefurish davar metalta v'gufay mammon. Just like this prat of shor, chamor, sev, salma is something that's metaltal, it's all things that can be picked up. It's not karka. V'gufay mammon, and the thing itself has value. It's not a representation of value like a star. Have gold over hametaltal v'gufay mammon yatsu karkoyish a metaltal. So that excludes karka because it's not metaltal. Yatsu avodim shehuk shel karkoyis. Avodim are compared to karkoyis. Yatsu shtaris af b'shem metaltal en gufay mammon. And exclude shtaris that are not guf and mammon. They themselves are not valuable. They just represent the ability to collect something of value. So therefore they're excluded. They're not similar to the pratim. And hektish, the fourth thing that we mentioned that is excluded from kefil, is reyeyuksiv. The pasuk says, I'll call, what is the pasuk? I'll call the pesha al shal chamar al sev al sham al kol aved shashiyemer ki uzeh. It ends off, it has to be l'reyeyu. We are on the bottom of Membeis Amid Beis. We're discussing the Mishnah. The Mishnah on Membeis Amid Beis says that karka and avodim, shtaris, and hektish are excluded from a number of things. They're excluded that we don't make shavuos on them. They're excluded that we don't pay kefil on them, and they're excluded from shavuos shomrim. Yeah, and then the Mishnah continues talking about other things. But now we said we brought the first part of the Gemara was explaining how you see tashlume kefil is excluded from these four things. Now the Gemara says, weiter, you also don't pay dalad v'hei, and that's clear. That's obviously only going to be relevant by hektish. It's not going to be relevant for the other things. My time. Why is it that Abra v'chamisha is not going to apply to these four things, to karka, avodim, shtaris, and hektish? Because the Torah says it has to be a payment of, if he steals his shar or seh, and then he sells it or shechts it, then he pays dalad v'hei. But included in the dalad v'hei is the kefil. That means the way you get to dalad v'hei is first you pay kefil, and then you pay another two or three more on top of it. But the Gemara says, since we just excluded kefil from these four things, so therefore, by definition, Arba v'chamisha is also going to be excluded because the Torah only has Arba v'chamisha apply when kefil would apply. And since these are shtaris, karkayis, avodim, and hektish are excluded from kefil, they're also, well, so like we said, it's only relevant for the hektish, it's going to be excluded from Arba v'chamisha as well. Zok Gemara, shoy mechinam ein nishba. If a shoy mechinam steals one of these four things, he doesn't make any. He doesn't steal them. If it's stolen from him, so normally the din is a shoy mechinam can make a shvuah to pater himself. We say he doesn't have to make a shvuah on these things. Where do we know this from? The Tanur Rabban. It's going to be exactly the same drasha like we had excluding kefil from these four things, because there's a similar pasuk legabi the din of shvuah shaymin by yeshay mechinam. Kitin isharayeu klal kesav v'kelim prat lishmar chazav v'kalal kalu prat v'kalu yatadon elkeina prat. And we said the prat was kesav and kelim. Ma prat the first davar metaltal v'gufay mammon. Just like the prat of kesav kelim is something that's metaltalin, so that excludes karka. And the gufay mammon and its gufa is a mammon, so that excludes shtaris. I've called over hamatalta v'gufay mammon. So yotzer karkois she'e metalton excludes karka that's not metalton. Yotzer avodim shukshul karkois, avodim mahokish karkois. They always go together. Yotzer star shavu b'shemetalton and gufay mammon. They don't represent. They are not actual money. They just represent the ability to collect money. And hekdish, the fourth thing, re'eyu ksiv. It says re'eyu in the pasuk, so it's excluded. The Mishnah continued and said, if he's yeshayim misachar, he doesn't pay if it's karka. Normally he would pay for gneva v'aveda, but he doesn't pay for karka, shtar, avadim, and hektish. Minal, where does that come from? The Tanur Rabban, kitin shoreu klal chamar shei se prat v'chol behemel lishmar chazav v'kol. This is the pasuk of shoy misachar that he has to pay for gneva v'aveda. Klalu pratu klal. The Gemara gets even tired, even the Gemara doesn't run out of energy. The Gemara says v'chulu, just the same thing like we said before, that it's going to be that karka is going to be excluded because it's not metaltalin, and avodim is hokish l'karkais, and shtar is not gufay mammon. Ad hekdish re'eh yuksiv, and then the hekdish again needs its own. It's not part of the klal pratu klal, but it says over here re'eyu as well. And therefore that excludes hekdish. Okay, so the Mishnah at the end says, there are things that are attached to the ground, but they're not going to be treated as karka, that they're going to be excluded from these dinim. So and the Mishnah gives an example. If someone he lent 10 grapevines to his friend. Reuben says, I lent you 10 grapevines that were full of grapes. And Shimon says back to him, no, it was only 5. So we say, it's not like karka that he's going to have to make a shvuah. Rameh says, Yechayev shvuah. And the Chacham say, no, kol mucharka hareika karka ein nishban. Yes, you don't make a shvuah. So Dr. Gemara, Mechal the Rameh savar kol mucharka karka ein karka. But the fact that Rameh says that you do make a shvuah on it, he holds that even though these grapevines that are full of grapes are attached to the ground, they're not considered to be karka, and therefore they do have a shvuah of a moedim mixes. In fact, Gemara the mithligi betuunas, the Chacham disagreed about it. Lifligi b'serukais. Why do we have to talk about grapes that are full of grapevines that are full of grapes? If it just comes down to whether something that's mechubal karka is kakarka, why don't we talk about empty grapevines? What do we have to say bedavka that there were grapes attached to them? He says no, it's not a question of generally anything attached to the ground is considered like part of the karka. We're talking about something that's ready to be, these grapevines are ready to be harvested. The Rameh says if they're already harvested, they're not attached to the ground. Really, whatever is attached to the ground is considered part of the ground. But these grapes are ready to be harvested, so they're considered to be separate. The Ramban disagree and say until it's collected, it's not considered to be part of the karka, and therefore you cannot make a shvuas moedim mitzvahs. We said at the end of the Mishnah, Ein nishbon al dava shebmidah shebemishkol shebeminyan. And the Gemara, the Mishnah gave examples. It said, like if someone said, I'm giving you my house full of grain, and the other guy says, I gave you back whatever you gave me, that's not considered to be a quantifiable amount, and therefore you will not have a Shavuos Moedim mix. Amar Rabbi, Lo shanu amalei bayistam. That's only if he said, I gave you a house full of grain. Aval amalei bayizeh malei yediyatanosei. But if he said to him, I'm giving you this house full of grain, so then you could go measure the amount of the house, and that's considered to be a measurable amount. Amalei Rav. Rav says, why did we have to come in the Mishnah to give an example of a measurable amount by a house and say it's talking about if he said up to this point is the lender says it was up till the ceiling and the borrower says it was up to the haloin, and we say that's a measurable amount. Let's just talk about a house without talking about specific measurements within the house. If he said, like you're saying, that if he said this, if he denoted a specific house and you said it's full, because that's considered a measurable amount, why don't we say that that's what they're arguing about? That's where the argument, that's where the distinction would be. He says that even if you say bayizeh, it's still not considered to be a specific house. Would not, and therefore he would not be mechuyev to make a Shavuos Moedim mixes. So Taisus explains, like, well, why isn't that a davar shabmidah shabemishkan? If you said a house and he said it's full and he said it's not, why isn't that davar shabmidah? So Taisus gives different answers. He says that even if a person says a full house, it could mean a little bit. There could be some wiggle room. He meant that it's almost full, so that's not necessarily a specific amount. Tanya Kavasi de Rava. I'll bring you a raya like Rava, that Tabayizeh is not considered to be a davar shabmidah. Kor tvua li biyadcha. If someone says, you have a kor, Reuben says to Shimon, you have a kor of my tvua in your hand, and the other one says, I don't have it, potter, right? He's a kaifer b'kail, and that's potter. There's no shvua. Menorah gedayra liyesh biyadcha. Reuben says to Shimon, you have a big menorah in my hand. The other one answers, all I have is a small menorah, potter, because mashatanu zeh, the person who admitted to having a different thing than what the lender claimed. Similarly, if he said this about a belt, he said, you have a big belt you have my big belt, and he said, no, I have a small belt. It's potter because what he's being made is not b'mikdas. He said, you have a kor tvua, but I only have a lesach, half of a kor. Chayiv, because that's a moed b'mikdas. Menorah bas eser litrin yesh b'yadcha. Menorah of 10 litrin. En chabiyadi al bas chamish litrin. Another one answers, all you have is 5 litrin. Chayiv. Klala shel davar. And then the Brisa concludes, the rule is, la'olam ein chavet sheyatana b'davar sheb'midah sheb'mishkol sheb'minim. Yoyed b'davar sheb'midah sheb'mishkol sheb'minim. Zak Gemara, klala shel davar lasuy amai. What is it coming to tell you? We haven't. We already said it has to be. The things we mentioned were all things that were davar sheb'mishkol minion. So what are you adding by that? My lav latsuya bayizeh malei. Is it not coming to tell you a bayizeh malei that that's not considered davar sheb'midah sheb'mishkol sheb'minion, and that's l'chayr not like Rav, because that's according to Rav that is concluded. Zak Gemara, umayshna menorah g'dayla menorah ketana. To answer this, it says, what's going on in this Brisa? What's the difference between a menorah gedola and a menorah ketana? Mashatanu loy haydali, mashahaydu loy tanu. We said that a large menorah and a small menorah, he's not going to be a moed b'mikdas, because the person who is being moed he's admitting he owes something. It's not the same thing as what the lender said he owed. What about the seif of the Brisa where it said he lent him something that was 10 litrin, which is a weight, and he says, I have to, the menorah that I owe you is 5 litrin. Masha tanu le'hoida, masha haid le'tanu. Amro Shmuel bar Yitzchak Chacha b'Menorah shel Chol Yisaskina. So he says no. The ratio when it says a menorah gadol, a menorah ktana, it's talking about it was a menorah made of different parts. So when he said, "I'm lending you something that's 10," and he answered, "I'm lending you," I'm sorry, no, in the case, the second case is menorah shel cholyos, where he said litros. So therefore he could take it apart, and when he said, "I owed you," he said, "You owed me 10 litros," and he answered, "I owe you 5." He means 5 pieces of this larger menorah. To come let me know. Then what he's being made is part of what he owed him. Why don't we say the same thing by the belt? Why doesn't the Mishnah also give that case by a belt, where it's a belt made up of different parts, and say if the borrower admitted to owing only some of the parts, there's going to be chayiv. The Brisa didn't say anything about the belt, a case where you chayiv. And the life like tani. Hakanam b'shalchoyis like tani. So the Gemara says it must not be talking about different parts. He says the example when we say that you chayiv for a menorah that's less than where the borrower said it's 5 litron and the owner had said it was 10. It's talking about where the borrower said that no, it's the same menorah, but it was shaved down to be 5 litron. I mean, you took away the weight of it by shaving it down, but it's the same menorah. Masha Enkein, where if it was he said Gedayl and Ketana, then you're going to be potter because that's talking about a higher one or a smaller one. That's a different menorah altogether. You can't shave down to make a large menorah small. Zok the Mishnah. Now it gets a little complicated, but we'll do what we can in the next 15 minutes. Someone who lent his chaver, Reuben that lent to Shimon with a mashkin, for Avram mashkin, and the mashkin got lost. Now in this case, the Mishnah is going to give 4 different cases. In all of the cases, the loan is the same amount. The loan is a selah. Now, in order to understand this Mishnah, you have to know a little bit, just a tiny, tiny bit of sizes. A selah is made up of 4 dinrin or 2 shekels. So there's 2 dinner in a shekel. There's 2 shekel in a selah. So again, a selah is 4 dinner and 2 shekel. So hamavas chaver al mashkin, v'avad mashkin, and the mashkin are lost. Amle selvi v'sicha la v'shekel ha'yeshava, and the lender says, I lent you a selah, and this mashkin that I lost was worth a shekel. Ba'ala omer, and the borrower says, now the borrower is the one who is he owes money, but he only owes the amount that it exceeds the mashkin that was lost. He says, I don't owe you anything because the mashkin that you lost was worth a selah. You lost it, so now that's the same amount as the loan, so I don't owe you anything. Potter, he's potter because he was a kaifer bakol. He denied owing anything. Selah v'sichalav v'shekel ha'yeshava. If the same thing, the lender says that he lent a selah, and that the borrower's mashkin was worth a shekel, so he still owed another shekel. It's true about the seller that there's not going to be any dispute about the amount of the loan in the first place. All the cases are the same. It was 3/4 of a seller that I owed. So he's masking that he still owes 1 dinar, but he's disagreeing with the lender. The lender said that that it was worth it was worth 3 dinars. So all I owe you is one dinar. And the lender saying, no, you owe 2 dinars. Chayiv. Since the borrower is conceding that he owes some of it. He agrees he owes at least 1 dinar, but he's saying I don't owe the 2nd dinar. He's a moed mixes and he has to make a shvur. What about now? We're going to talk about where the amount of the mashkin exceeds the loan, and now the borrower is the one who's going after the lender to pay him. And the lender says, I don't owe you anything. potter. Since the seller is denying owing anything, he's a kafir bakal and he's potter. Seller v'sina lo avashtayim hayeshava. But if the borrower claims that the mashkin was worth 2 sellers, and therefore the lender owes him a seller because that's how much it exceeds the loan. It's true I owe you something, but the mashkin was worth 5 dinrim. It was more than a seller, so all I owe you is 3 dinrim. Chayiv, because since he's being maskim that he owes him at least 1 dinar, he's not a kafir bakal, he's a maiden mikvus. Uminish, but who is the one who swears? Misha pekadin etzlai. The one who has the pekadin, meaning the lender is the one who always has to swear. Why? We don't want to be in a situation where the borrower makes a shvuah how much the pekadin is, and then the lender produces the pekadin and shows that the borrower was incorrect. It's a little hard to understand why are we worried about this, but the point is we don't want the lender to have that much leverage, because he could just make a claim and he'll see what the borrower says, and if he could ruin his life by making him a chashad al shvuah and making him forever unable to swear. So therefore we prefer to have the lender make the shvuah rather than the borrower. So we had 4 cases. At the end, we said this rule that the lender is the one who has to make the shvuah. Which one of the 4 cases are we talking about? A seifa, is it talking about the last case that we just mentioned, where the borrower had said that the mashkin was worth 2 sellers, and the lender had said, no, it's worth 5 dinrin, which is 3/4 of a seller, or 3 dinrin less than what the borrower said. So he's saying, I only have to pay you back 3, not 4 dinrin. The typically the shvuah gabe malva. Why do we have to say that the shvuah, that the malva is the one who swears? He's the one who's the maider mixes. He anyway would be the one who is swearing. So what do you need this rule that we say we want him to be the one who shvuah makes a shvuah? Amar Shmuel areisha, v'chein amar Rav Chia bar Rav areisha, v'chein amar Rav Yechanan areisha. It's going on the reisha. My reisha. What does it mean when we say the reisha? Sefer the reisha. It's talking about the second case of the reisha. Because in the first case of the reisha, we said you're potter. There's no shvuah at all. So we're talking about the sefer the reisha. What's the sefer the reisha? Selah v'sicha la v'shakel hayeshava, where the lender says that I lent you a selah and it was only worth a shekel, and the borrower says it was only 3 dinrin. It was 3 dinrin. It wasn't just a shekel, and therefore all I owe you is 1 dinner, not 2. The shvuah gabe loivahu. The loiv is the one who should make the shvuah because he's the baidim mix. The shvuah but a malva should do ya milva. Like we said, because the reason that we don't want to make the loiva swear and then have the malva produce it. So the Rashi had said, he had discussed this in this exact case where the borrower said it was the mashkin was worth 3, and the lender said that it was worth a shekel, 2 dinner. So we said that the loiv is a maider mixus, that the lender is also going to have to make a shvuah in this case. We're worried that maybe the lender just decided he wanted this object. So in order for him not to just claim that it's lost and keep it, and he's willing to pay the borrower just so that he'll take the loss because he wants the object that was the mashkin. So we will require him also to make a shvuah. So he makes a shvuah and the borrower makes a shvuah of how much it's worth. So now if the borrower is the one who's making the shvuah of how much it's worth, so why don't we still have that problem that maybe the lender will volunteer to produce the object? So what we're saying is that the lender makes the first shvuah. They are both making a shvuah, and the borrower is making his own shvuah. But since the lender already made a shvuah that he doesn't have in his hands, he's not going to be able to produce it. And then after that, the borrower is able to make a shvuah of how much it is. Okay, Zakt Gemara, a new din in Legabi Mashkainis. Amar Shmuel. And this is going to be, it's a little hard to grasp because it's a different view of what a collateral is than what we've thought until now, and certainly different to the way a collateral is generally treated in the non-halachic world. Amar Shmuel, Hay man usvi alba zuzi lechavre. This person who lent 1,000 zuzim to his friend, umashkan le kata de magla, and he gave him a handle of a scythe as his mashkin, which is worth, 1 zuz. Very minimal amount as compared to the loan. Ovid kata de magla, ovid alpha zuzi. If he loses the collateral, he loses the alpha zuzi. Rashi says, Ovid alpha zuzi, the sav v'kabel, aval kol zman shehen kayem, and al kochet goy v'choyve, im malva stamhu. Stam malva shloshim yoyim. Whatever. But his point is that when someone makes a mashkin, he's making his ability to be goiva the amount totally in the mashkin, as long as he has to have the mashkin in his possession. Once he loses that mashkin, he's lost his ability to collect the mashkin, even if it's an oinus. L'chayr, according to Rashi, and the lender can say, "I'll pay you back for your kata de magla, and then I'll take and then I'll get my 1,000 zuz." His ability to collect is dependent on the existence of his possession of that mashkin. Aval tarti katati loy. But if there were two handles, and he lost one of them, Rashi says in that case, he said it's dependent on on the lender having the mashkin, and he has part of the mashkin. It doesn't make a difference that part of the mashkin is not here. As long as he still retains part of the mashkin, then he has the ability to pay him back for the mashkin that was lost, and he's going to be able to collect his 1,000 zuz. For Rav Nachman, Amafilu tati katati avid chada avid chamish meya avid idach avid kulei. Rav Nachman disagrees with what Shmuel says. L'chayr, there's different Rishonim who say that he's explaining or disagreeing. We'll say B'Pashas he's disagreeing. He says even if there are 2 handles and he lost one of them, each one represents half of the loan. If half each, assuming both handles are equal value, each one represents half of the loan. If he lost half of it, he lost half of his loan ability to collect that part of the loan. Avakata v'naska loy. But if it was a kata and a naska, so a naska is a pile, a nugget of silver. So a nugget of silver is more like a advance payment. So that everyone understands, that he says, even I who disagree with Shmuel and say if you lost part of the handle, if you have 2 handles, you lost that part of the loan. But a naska is looked on as something that the lender is going to take his payment from. So therefore, if the naska is lost, he only loses connected the naska. And even if though there was also a kata, we look at the naska, and the naska means that he's not looking at this collateral as that he's going to have it. The idea is not he has to have that in order to collect. Rather, that's the source of payment, and it's not considered to lose his ability to collect the loan. Nardoi says even that. Afilu kata v'naska, avid naska, avid palga, avid kata, avid kule. He says it's going to go, no, a naska is not any different. It's treated just like 2 katas, and he agrees with l'chayra with the Rav Nachman and like Shmuel that this naska is treated like 2 katas, and 2 katas, you're going to be, if you lose any part of it, you're going to be pater on. Tnan, Seli v'sichela v'shekel ha'yeshava. We ask a kasha on Shmuel. Our Mishnah said, if you lent a sela and the lender says it was worth a sela, the lender says it was worth a shekel. This is the seifa of the Reisha. We said chayiv. So l'chayra, why is, according to Shmuel, if you lose part of if he's saying that I lost the mashkin, why isn't he potter altogether? According to Shmuel, once you lost the mashkin, there's nothing left. You have no ability to collect. Let him say you have your mashkin that you lost, and therefore you're not able to collect from me. So Masisim b'de parish, Shmuel b'de lay parish. Our mission is talking about where the person said specifically, I'm only accepting this mashkin that it's worth, that I'm taking it for its value. But it's not that it represents the whole loan, that if I lose it, I'm going to lose my ability to loan. And Shmuel is talking about a case where he didn't say that. Let's say this machlokes, whether a person which of Shmuel and this someone who is chaylik on it, that Shmuel says that someone who loses his mashkin loses the ability to collect. Let's say this is a machlokes tanoim. Hamavis chaver el mashkin v'avra mashkin yishba v'yitel esem oisav. Someone lent his friend Reuven lent to Shimon with a mashkin. The lender lent with a mashkin. He took a mashkin and he lost the mashkin. Yishba v'yitel esem oisav. He can make a shvuah and take his money even though he lost the mashkin. It sounds like according to Rabbi Eliezer, he doesn't even have to compensate him for the mashkin. He says, if you lost your mashkin, you lost my secha. That sounds like Shmuel. But if he lent the money with a star and he left over a mashkin, according to everyone, if you lose the mashkin, you lost your ma'asav. And this is going to be because we're going to say the reason why someone who lent without a star, he could say that the mashkin was merely a Zeicha Dvarim B'Alma. That's what we're going to say all the way at the end. But when there's a star, then he can't say. Then it's clear that he means it as a Zeicha Dvarim B'Alma because you have the star. What do you need the mashkin for? If you lose the mashkin, so therefore the only point of the mashkin, therefore it can't be a Zeicha Dvarim. You have the star as a Zeicha Dvarim. So it must be that you're using the mashkin as the point that you're saying that's what I'm going to collect from. It's only if it's extant, if it's lost, then I'm not required to pay. Saktumar, Hechidami, what is the case? Ideshav Yashir Zuzi. This thing that we said, Hamav ala mashkin, Vav ala mashkin, Yizir Yit Moisa, that Rabbi Eliezer said you swear and you take the Moisa, Rabbi Kiva says that he loses his ability to last. If we're saying that the mashkin is equal to the amount of what he's borrowed, my time at Rabbi Eliezer, how could Rabbi Eliezer say that Yishba v'yitel es ma'isa, that he could go take his money? He lost a mashkin that was equivalent to the loan. What would give him the right to now go and collect his money, even though he lost the mashkin that was worth the same amount? Allah b'loy shavi shir zuzi. Elamai, we're talking about where it's less than the amount. Ubishmuel kamifli, and the machlokes is the gabi Shmuel. Whether, like we said, whether the partial amount that he owes, that the mashkin represents, Shmuel says, even though it's just a portion of the amount, if he doesn't have the mashkin to return, he can't get what he's owed. Loy, zaktamar loy, but the loy shavi kulam lesla de Shmuel. We could even say that in this machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and Kiva, they did both disagree with Shmuel, that if the amount of the loan of the mashkin is less than the loan, the lender doesn't lose his ability to collect on. Over here, it's talking about where it's equal to the amount. If it's equal to the amount, why would Rabbi Eliezer disagree? They're arguing about Rabbi Yitzchak. Where does it come from that a Baal Chayv could be kaina mashkin? That a Baal Chayv, when he gets a mashkin, it becomes his. It's almost like a rental that he's owning it for now. It says that if someone has a mashkin and the person needs it at night, he should give it back to him. Why is it called a tzedakah to give back the mashkin? It must be that it belongs to the lender. So Rav Yitzchak, so that's what they're arguing about. They're talking about the mashkin is equivalent, but if it's owned by the lender, if it gets lost, Rav Eliezer says that if it gets lost, it's his loss, and he has lost his ability to collect the Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer doesn't hold like Rav Yitzchak, so he treats him as a shomer. So therefore, even though he took it as a tashlumim that he could use it to pay it, it doesn't belong to the lender. And therefore, if something happens, if it gets lost or stolen, he's a shomer chinam. He doesn't have to pay it back. But according to Rabbi Akiva, he holds Rabbi Yitzchak. He says he becomes an owner. So now when he loses it, it's his thing that he lost, but he has to pay back for the thing that he took, this mashkin that he took from the borrower. So therefore, he's going to have to pay him back, and he's not going to be able to. The lender's no longer going to be able to collect his loan. In fact, the Gemara, Lamed Rabbi Yitzchak Tanoi, can we say Rabbi Yitzchak is arguing on a machlekas Tanoim? Betizbra. Sagt the Gemara. This whole comparison to Rav Yitzchak is not accurate, because that which Rav Yitzchak says that the lender becomes the owner of the mashkin is only when he lends it at the time of the halva. I'm not at the time of halva. Later on, when the lender comes to collect and the borrower doesn't have, and Bezdin says you take some mashkin from him. So at that point we say he becomes an owner, because that's closer to it being used as a payment. Everyone agrees shaloi b'shas halva like Rabbi Yitzchak. So he says we're not talking about mishkan b'shas halva. We're talking about a different machlokes shemer aveda. I'm sorry, I'm going a little late, but I think it's kedai to finish the parak once we're this close. The itmak shemer aveda. Rava amak shemer chinam. What's the status of a shemer aveda? Rav says he's a shemer chinam. Rav Yosef oimek shemer sacha. This we have all around Shas. Rav Yosef says someone who has an aveda, since he's potter, he doesn't have to give tzedakah. Isaac mitzvah is potter min mitzvah, or either he's a shemer aveda because he's a shemer sacha because he's getting the value, he's getting a mitzvah out of it. Rav Yosef says he's a shemer sacha. Masha Enkein, the chaylik on Rav Yosef says that he's that's not really something valuable. Rabba says he's a shemer chinam. So the same thing would apply over here. The person who lent money, someone who lends money, is also doing a mitzvah. He's lending money as a mitzvah. So that's what, according to Rabbi Kiva, who said that that he's going to have to pay back, he's holding like Rabbi Yosef, because he's saying he's a shemer sacha who's getting paid, and therefore he has to pay back what the mashkin that got lost. Rabbi Elazar says like Rabbah, he says he's a shemer chinam. He's not getting anything of value, and therefore if it gets lost or stolen, the lender is going to be part of what happened to the mashkin. Everyone holds like Rabbi Yosef. So what is the reason for Rebbe Eliezer? The question is what happens when a malva is using the mashkin as he's holding on to it, he's using it, and he's paying the rental, he's deducting the rental from the amount of the loan. Marsav and mitzvah ka'avid. One mandama says even though he's holding a mashkin and using it, it's still a mitzvah like Rabbi Yosef. But Marsav alav mitzvah ka'avid. If someone's holding a mashkin and it came shmita, even though the loan, the mashkin is only worth half of the loan or part of the loan, it's not meshamet. The shmita is not going to stop him from being able to collect. Divrei Reb Shimon Gamliel. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi Omer im haya mashkani keneged chayva ein meshamet. When lav meshamet. No, it depends. If the mashkin is keneged the whole chayv, then it's not meshamet. But if not, it's meshamet. Sak the Gemara. So, my ein meshamet ka amar Tanakam. What does the Tanakam mean when he says that the borrower still has to pay the loan? That Reb Shimon Gamliel said. If it means only keneged the amount that the loan is worth, that means that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was chaylik on him, so that even the amount that the keneged the mashkin is going to be potter because of shmita. Elamai tafas mashkin. Then what is the use of the mashkin altogether? If it's not even treated as being keneged the amount that it's worth. Elalav keneged kulai. So Elamai, it must be that we're talking about where the Reb Shimon means that the the lender is going to be entitled to get the full amount of the loan, in spite of the fact that it's Shemitah, because there's a mashkin. They're arguing about Shmuel. According to Rav Shimon, the mashkin is connected the entire loan, and therefore you could get the whole thing after Shemitah because you have a mashkin, even though it's less than the amount. And according to Rav Yehuda, he doesn't hold like Shmuel, and therefore only that part that's connected you can get it after Shemitah. It's not a loy. Lo'olam connected. We're talking about, even Rav Shimon is talking about only that it should be connected, the amount that's connected alone. Tanakama Sava connectoi, that Rav Shimon Gamliel is saying that he doesn't have to, Shemitah is not mishamet from the amount that's equal to the mashkin. It even doesn't have to pay back the amount that's connected to the mashkin. We asked then what is the mashkin for? It's not used to as something to collect from, but it's just something that he could say, if you don't give me back that I have this mashkin, but it's not considered a payment. It's just there as a zikaron dvarim ba'alma, whatever that means. That it's he's still going to have to fully collect the rest of the the loan, and therefore it's not even mishamet keneged the loan itself. Sorry, I'm really sorry for holding over. I should have started a little earlier. I didn't realize how the timing would work out with the end.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.